Researchers once followed two groups of babies. Same love, same care, same everything on paper. Years later, one group grew up steady and confident. The other grew up anxious, always a little unsettled, always searching for something they couldn't quite name. When scientists went looking for the reason, the answer kept circling back to one person in the house, the father. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most dads are getting this wrong right now without even realizing it. Not because they don't care, but because nobody ever explained what's actually happening inside that tiny skull while they're just sitting there, playing, being ordinary. And the window to get it right, it closes faster than almost anyone expects. It's worth being honest about something up front, too. This isn't a video about blame, and it isn't a video designed to make anyone feel like they've already failed. It's about a specific, well-documented body of research that rarely gets explained clearly, mostly because it doesn't come packaged as a single dramatic finding, but as dozens of smaller studies that, added together, tell a genuinely consistent story. Because right now, in this exact moment, your child's brain is under construction. 1,000,000 new connections every single second, and you are holding a piece of the blueprint. Let's start with the scale of it, because the numbers alone are worth sitting with. A newborn's brain is only about a quarter the size it will eventually be as an adult. By age 3, it's already 80% of the way there. 80% by age 3. And during these exact years, a baby's brain is forming more than 1,000,000 new neural connections every second, a figure that comes directly from Harvard's Center on the Developing Child. That's not a typo, and it's not exaggeration for effect. It's simply faster brain building than at any other point across an entire human lifetime. Here's the part that matters most, though. Those connections don't form randomly. They form in response to the faces a baby sees, the voices a baby hears, the way a baby gets held, hour after hour, day after day. The brain is quite literally wiring itself around whatever world it happens to be born into, which means the people surrounding that baby aren't just bystanders watching development happen. They're the construction crew, actively shaping the wiring itself. It's a strange thing to sit with, that a completely ordinary Tuesday evening, feeding, bathing, a bit of silly play on the living room floor, is functionally construction work on the single most important organ your child will ever own. For a long time, most research treated only one crew member as essential: Mom. Dad got filed under backup, the substitute who stepped in when Mom needed a break. That picture has been quietly falling apart for the better part of 2 decades now. A study published in 2017 filmed fathers playing with their babies at just 3 months old, then followed up with those same children again at age 2. The fathers who showed up more engaged, more active, more genuinely tuned in during that early play had children who scored measurably higher on thinking and problem-solving tasks by 24 months. And here's the detail that made researchers sit up. This held true even after accounting separately for how sensitive and responsive the mother had been. The father wasn't just backing up her contribution, he was adding something distinctly his own, and it was still visible a full year and a half later. It's worth being honest here. This kind of finding shows an association, not an ironclad guarantee, but it's been observed more than once, in more than one dataset, and it keeps pointing in the exact same direction every single time. What makes this particular study stand out is the follow-up window itself. A year and a half is a long stretch of time in developmental research, long enough that a lot of early, fleeting patterns simply wash out and disappear entirely by the second measurement. The fact that this specific effect held up over that stretch is part of why researchers took it seriously. So what, specifically, is a father actually adding? A huge piece of it comes down to something Harvard researchers call serve and return. Your baby serves something, a coo, a gurgle, a reach, a look toward you, and you return it with a word, a smile, a touch back. That simple back-and-forth exchange, repeated literally thousands of times across ordinary days, is what physically lays down the brain's wiring, connection by connection. But serve and return does something else too, something just as important. It manages stress. When a baby gets overwhelmed, too much noise, too much stimulation, too far from comfort, stress hormones like cortisol start climbing fast. A responsive adult who notices and answers that distress brings the whole system back down toward baseline. Harvard's researchers have a specific name for that adult, a buffer, and here's exactly why a present father matters so much in this picture. He's a second buffer, a second set of eyes catching the serve, a second person capable of pulling a storm back toward calm. The more reliably that happens across the early years, from more than one direction, the better a child's own stress system learns to settle itself. For life, not just for childhood. Think about what that actually means in practice. A baby with two consistently responsive adults in the house isn't just getting double the attention in some vague, additive sense. They're getting redundancy built into their earliest safety net. More chances across an ordinary day for a serve to get returned. More chances for a rising stress response to get met and brought back down before it fully escalates. There's one more thing fathers do, almost entirely without thinking about it, that quietly trains a skill your child will lean on for decades. But first, your voice. A baby's hearing switches on before birth. By the third trimester, they're already listening, muffled, filtered, but real, to rhythm and tone drifting in from the outside world. A landmark study from 1980 showed newborns already preferred their mother's voice specifically because they'd been soaking in it, non-stop, for months. For a long time, that was treated as the whole story. Mom's voice automatically wired in. Then a 2014 study looked specifically at fathers and found something that should change how every expecting dad thinks about those final months. Unborn babies did respond to their father's voice, but only, specifically, when dad had been talking to them regularly in the weeks leading up to birth. A mother's voice gets wired in automatically. She's carrying the baby, her voice is humming through her own body constantly, all day, every day. A father's voice has to be earned, through repetition, on purpose. The dad who talks out loud, who reads a page from a book to a belly that can't answer back, is laying down real familiarity in that developing brain before his child has ever taken a single breath of outside air. Which means the moment your baby is born and hears your voice for the first time, you're not actually a stranger to them. You're a sound they already trust. There's a small, practical takeaway hiding inside that finding too. Consistency in those final months appears to matter more than volume or eloquence. A few minutes of talking most days seems to build familiarity more reliably than one long, elaborate reading session every once in a while. The brain doesn't appear to be grading the content. It's tracking repetition. Now, the thing I promised earlier. Watch how dads tend to play compared to how moms tend to play on average. Mothers often lean calmer, more verbal, more soothing in their interactions. Fathers often lean physical. The lifting, the chasing, flipping a giggling toddler upside down. The kind of roughhousing that makes a baby shriek with that specific mix of thrill and mild panic all at once. For years, this got quietly dismissed as dads simply being careless or less attentive. Researchers now think it's doing something genuinely important. A psychologist named Paquette built an entire framework around this pattern, calling it the activation relationship, where a mother's bond often centers on comfort, a safe place to always come back to. A father's bond often centers on the opposite, challenge, stimulation, a gentle push just past the edge of comfort while staying fundamentally safe the entire time. Follow-up research has linked this specific kind of play to stronger emotional regulation in children later on. But there's a catch, and honestly, it's the whole point. It only works when dad keeps the play regulated. When a father stays genuinely tuned in and eases the game back down before it tips into actual chaos, a child learns something remarkable, that they can get wildly excited, feel briefly out of control, ride right up to that edge, and come safely back down every single time. That's a rehearsal. Over and over, in the safest possible setting, a child practices the exact skill of going from completely overwhelmed back to calm again. And that particular skill, feeling a huge, overwhelming feeling and finding your own way back from it, is one of the most important abilities a human being ever builds. When the roughhousing turns into chaos with no steady hand guiding it, though that benefit tends to disappear entirely, which is really the whole crux of the finding, the value was never in the roughness itself. It was always in what happened right after the peak. There's one more role, and it kicks in right around the end of a baby's first year. It's called social referencing. When a baby encounters something new, an unfamiliar face, a sudden loud noise, an unfamiliar room, they instinctively freeze and check your face to decide how they should feel about it. They're borrowing your reaction as their own temporary compass. Look calm and curious yourself, and they'll explore. Look alarmed, and they'll pull back immediately. Researchers who have spent decades studying fatherhood specifically describe a father's role here almost like a bridge, the link connecting a safe, familiar home base to the much bigger, unfamiliar world just outside it. Your own willingness to step towards something new teaches your child that doing the same thing is safe too. This might be the piece that's easiest to underestimate, precisely because it requires nothing more than an expression. There's no toy involved, no activity to plan, just a face held steady at exactly the moment a small person is deciding whether the world in front of them is worth exploring or worth avoiding. So what does any of this actually look like, in practice, on an ordinary Tuesday night? Smaller than you'd probably guess. Narrate your day out loud, even the genuinely boring parts. You're feeding that voice directly into a developing brain either way. Get down on the floor, at their actual level, instead of watching from the couch a few feet away, because presence means being genuinely in a moment, not simply near one. When they glance up at you feeling unsure about something, give them a calm, easy expression. You're functioning as the signal that tells their nervous system the world is currently safe. Do the roughhousing, and be the steady hand that knows exactly when to bring the energy back down. Answer the serves, the coos, the babbles, the little reaches, as though it's genuinely the most interesting conversation you've had all day. Because to your baby, in that exact moment, it absolutely is. None of it costs money. None of it requires a degree. One more thing worth saying clearly, because I know exactly who's watching this. None of this is a description of a flawless, perfect father. The research was never describing someone who never messes up. It's describing a present one. Someone who shows up, imperfectly, again and again, on completely ordinary days. And if you're a mother watching this, or raising a child without a consistently present father in the picture, this isn't a verdict on your child's future. A single devoted parent, a steady grandparent, a committed mentor can absolutely provide these exact same things. The familiar voice, the safe challenge, the bridge to the wider world. What matters is the role getting filled, and it can genuinely be filled by love arriving from more than one direction. It's also worth saying that present was never meant to describe a specific number of hours. A father working long shifts, or living apart from his child for periods of time, can still build every one of these same connections, through consistent calls, through the minutes that do exist being genuinely full attention rather than divided attention. The research keeps pointing back to responsiveness and consistency as the actual mechanism, not physical proximity by itself. Your baby won't remember the specific words you said tonight. They won't remember this particular evening at all, not as a story, not as a memory they could ever recount. What they keep instead is something wordless, a feeling stored bone deep, that there was once a voice that meant safety, a pair of hands that meant adventure, a face that visibly lit up the second they walked into a room. They will carry that feeling into every single room they ever walk into for the rest of their life. You are not waiting for some future moment to start mattering to your child. Today, on the most completely ordinary day you can imagine, you already do.